everybody, I am so excited for our second workshop. We are here to talk about when is the right time to pursue a graduate degree. I mean, you are all professionals in your careers. You are all potentially thinking about it or are already in a graduate degree, or maybe you're considering pursuing an additional graduate degree if you've already got one. This is an extremely pertinent and relevant topic for anybody who's thought about more education. This workshop is for you. I'm really excited for you to experience our guest speaker this evening. It's going to be really insightful, very data-driven. It's going to have a lot of facts and figures that will hopefully help you make the most educated decision about what makes the most sense for you. By the way, my name is Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. And really, you've already started meeting with your mentor. That is awesome. Hopefully, you've already set up your first meeting. Maybe you've even already set up your second meeting. If that's the case, that's amazing news. But the focus for this workshop is how can you be intentional about really taking steps forward for yourself professionally. Now, I know that these workshops are on a wide array of topics. Obviously, our first workshop was on how to transition into a managerial role. This workshop's about determining whether or not it's worth it to pursue a graduate degree. But I really want to challenge you that when you're in your mentor meetings, that you are customizing it to your experience for what you want to accomplish with your own career. Because I recognize that some of these workshops are more relevant to you than others, and that's, by the way, completely okay. We bring in really amazing world-class guest speakers to come in and be our guests for these workshops, and that's fantastic. And the ideal goal is that all of them are relevant to you, but I recognize that it varies. And some workshops are going to be more relevant to some people than other people. But what I want you to recognize is that even in this workshop, even if you feel like it's not the most relevant to you, that there's a lot of nuggets. There's a lot of topics that we talk about with our guest speaker that I believe can apply to a lot of situations that you may face in your life. So I'm really excited to get started. Now, one thing that I really want to focus in on, and this is something we talked about last time in our workshop, and that is understanding your strategy, your story, and your state. Those are the three keys to being successful in this program. The most important one, that being state. So physically, where are you? What is going on in your world? Are you having a bad day? Are you having a stressful day? Are you having a difficult time with your significant other? Did your dog just die? I don't care what is going on with your world, no matter how stressful, no matter how mad, no matter how angry, no matter how bad anything is going on in your world, you can change your state in a matter of seconds because your emotions drive your emotions. So what I want you to do right now to get yourself ready for this workshop is I want you to stand up and I want you to shake it out. I want you to shimmy it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah! Just let it loose, let it out, let it go. Because what you're doing is you're letting blood flow to your brain. You're releasing endorphins in your brain. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for receiving information. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when you sit down for too long, you have diminishing returns on your mental investment. Your likelihood of retaining that information is significantly minimized. So I want to challenge you to get up, shake it out, let it loose, get your blood flowing, because when your blood's flowing to your brain, your likelihood of actually remembering this information is significantly higher. Now, when you're going into your mentor relationship, when you're meeting with your mentor, if you can get your blood flowing before those mentor meetings, you're much more likely to retain the information your mentor has to say for you and to you. But if you don't get yourself into a state ready for this mentor relationship, your likelihood of making the most out of that experience diminishes. So I want you to get yourself into a state. Now, the next key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself? Why will you be successful? I'd love to know it. In fact, actually, if you could, post it in the comment section. Why are you going to be successful? I mean, if in your mind you think, hey, I'm cool with mediocre, I'm cool with just settling, this program is not for you. I can tell you that right now. If you're thinking to yourself, hey, I want to settle, I just want to kind of like not really aspire for too much, you wouldn't be in this mentor program. So what I'm here to tell you is shoot for the stars. Have big, crazy, hairy, audacious goals. And by the way, don't let anybody else judge you for your goal because your goals are your own. So what is audacious to you may not be audacious to somebody else, and what is audacious to somebody else may not be audacious to you, but that is okay. It's not for you to judge. It is for you to make strides for yourself, because at the end of the day, this program is about personal growth and confidence, helping you put yourself into the best position for you to succeed. So if you can tell yourself a story for why you will be marginally to exemplary, significantly better than where you're at the beginning of this program, that is awesome, and that is where I want you to go. That's where I want you to be. Now, the last part is your strategy. What is the strategy that you're going to do to start putting yourself in the best position to succeed? Now, this program, this workshop specifically, is about when is the right time to pursue a graduate degree. Now, one thing that I strongly encourage you to do, because here's the thing, at the end of the day, your strategies are all about routines. We think about routines both in the bad sense as well as the good sense. Bad routines are, things that we consider habits, bad habits, they're bad. But we typically have a negative connotation around habits just because of so many bad habits we've heard about. But there's a lot of things and a lot of beneficial things with good habits. So what are things that you can do on a daily, regular basis that helps you prepare for anything that you want to be better at? That is what I want to focus on. So one strategy that you can implement is implementing a SWOT analysis on a monthly basis of your life, of your career, of your higher education experience, of anything. Doing a SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So if you're currently right now in a job and you're thinking to yourself, I'm contemplating a graduate degree, but I don't really know right now, what you'll want to think about is, what are the strengths of pursuing a graduate degree? What are the weaknesses of pursuing a graduate degree? What are the opportunities of staying in your current role? And what are the threats to leaving your current role for this graduate degree? If you can lay this out for yourself, it will help you on a substantial level towards making the most educated decision for yourself for why you should or should not pursue a graduate degree. Now, our guest speaker this evening is going to talk about the literal specific facts and figures of financially, when does it make sense for you to get a graduate degree, and when does it not make sense for you to get a graduate degree? And so I think you're going to really enjoy what our guest speaker has to say about this, because the insight is unbelievable. I think you're going to really enjoy it. But in terms of the strategies, I want you to do a SWOT analysis to help you prepare for that. The other thing is, I want you to start having more informational interviews beyond just your mentor. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what stage of life you are in. You can have conversations with people. Just because you're not a quote unquote current college student in a collegiate sense, you're still a student of life. You're still a student of professional outcomes. And by being willing to admit that you're still a student, you can take the knowledge of somebody else. You can say, hey, I'm a student. I'm interested in learning more about XYZ field. Would you be willing to have a coffee with me or a conversation with me? That is a great conversation starter for you to learn more about other fields, because at the end of the day, it's not about stagnating. It is about growing. It is about learning. It is about being uncomfortable and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So those are the key points I really want you to take away from our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to jump into our guest speaker. By the way, if you've not connected with me on LinkedIn yet, please do so. We have a LinkedIn community, a Ambition in Motion group where all of us participate in it. We can post our questions. Our entire community can answer them or see them or relate to them. It's a really cool place to be. If you don't have a LinkedIn, absolutely get a LinkedIn. If you do have a LinkedIn and you have not connected with me, I strongly encourage it. I'm so excited to get started, and I'm so excited for you to experience our guest speaker this evening. Thanks for your time. I'm looking forward to get this guest interview going. Hey everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to dive into our topic of how to determine the right time to pursue additional education. I know a lot of you are young professionals or just professionals in your careers, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, when do I pursue additional education? When do I go back to get that MBA? When do I go back to get that master's degree? When do I go back to get that PhD? Or do I go back to get those additional education or credentials or credits or certifications? And why? And what are the main driving factors? I think this is something that's on the minds of a lot of professionals, and really the factors that play into it, I think, are really critical as well. I'm excited to dive into this topic with our guest speaker here this evening, Mireya Dominguez, on how to determine the right time to pursue additional education. Mireya is a solution-driven professional with in-depth experience in operations, management, planning, and events, global project development, training, and process improvement. She's highly motivated and forward-thinking, a proven performer with exceptional organizational skills to ensure seamless operations in a fast-paced environment, build dependable and profitable partnerships. She's been an executive for Rotary International and is now the Associate Vice President for Tur, Mullen, Watkins, and Brandt. Mireya, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I would love if you could, I know I kind of gave like an intro and a high level overview of you, but I would love if you could just introduce yourself and your educational path to this point, educational and professional path of like undergrad, career, getting additional education, and how you determined kind of why you wanted to pursue that additional educational path.
Sure. So I will say that my path and education it's unique in the sense that I started out going to a four-year college or university, and after that first semester, I didn't know that colleges and universities can drop students. So that was a major surprise for me. From there, I went to a local community college just to get the basic courses, math, English, humanities, things like that out of the way. And, at that time, I still wasn't sure what path I wanted to take, what I wanted to do, that field of study. And I thought, well, let me go into healthcare. I'm going to get my feet wet and receive a certification in medical assisting, which is really strange. I know this is, how it's from where I started to where I'm at. And so I went to a private college and, received my certificate as well as my associates in healthcare. And from there, during that time that I was studying, I also interned at a 3-site family practice. I found that I enjoyed it, working in the healthcare area. I actually had to take time off from finishing my studies so that I can repay my loans. So after about a year, I went back, studied, completed my bachelor's, and from there, I started to branch out. So I worked in not only the front office area of a clinic, but also in what we call the back end. So working as a medical assistant, drawing blood, cleaning the surgical instruments, using autoclave, as well as, taking patients, their blood pressure, vitals, things like that. From there, I went into billing and learned from that aspect. And from working there, then I moved into working in the university, working in collections, working with students and helping set payment plans. After that, then I worked into True Value, which is headquartered here in Chicago, working in the accounts payable department. And so I had the opportunity to work with vendors, primarily international vendors, and that opened up the opportunity for me to go into Rotary International. So the reason that I was looking for, something to go into the nonprofit from corporate was really my decision to, have something that's more meaningful, something that would make an impact, and really enjoy what I was doing. So I had the opportunity to apply and was accepted working at Rotary International. I joined the organization as a humanitarian grants coordinator. So I managed about 280 grants in different geographical areas. So they ranged from West Coast US to Mexico, parts of Latin America, parts of Europe, including Russia. And so I worked there for about 7 years. During that time, the organization also offered some in-house professional development courses. So I definitely took advantage of that. And after 7 years working in the grants area, I moved over to the fund development. I wanted to learn more about that end of the foundation and the organization, more of like these donors, their stories, their backgrounds, why they give. And from there, I decided, this was a perfect time for me, given my, situation, my, the time, financial means, to go back to obtain my master's and as well as my certificate. So one of the things that I did realize is that working for a member-based nonprofit organization, it's not the same as a traditional organization. So that really helped me to learn more about grant writing. So that was something that I didn't really have the opportunity when I was working at Rotary. However, learning about annual giving, appeals, things of that nature, I found that it was really helpful.
That's really interesting. Well, one, thank you for your story. Thank you for your vulnerability within your story. What I really loved about your story is the fact that you had you were real. Like you weren't
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, I was perfect and I had a perfect 4-year degree and things went swimmingly. And then I just right after I graduated, immediately had a job and someone just said, oh, hey, here's your get out of debt free card. Here you go. And then I just, pursued a master's degree and oh, someone paid for that. It's like there was realness in your story. And I really can appreciate that because there's a lot of decisions that you had to make there. I think a lot of students, I think a lot of professionals, when they pursue their degree path, they are thinking to themselves like, okay, great, I'm going to take out this student loan debt and then I'm going to repay it back at a later date. In fact, I think for a lot of college students, they don't even think about the student loan debt. I think it's almost like this assumed, hey, my parents told me I need to go to college. I'm going to college and I'm taking out this debt and I'm going through with it. And if I don't go to college, and my parents think I'm a failure. And so it's this really difficult thing because there's not necessarily, at least what I see with a lot of students, a lot of thought process around the financial commitment of why pursue this additional education. So there's a couple of things I would love to unpack. So you mentioned in your very first university that they can de-enroll you. How did that happen? What happened there?
So I was doing well, attending all the classes. I do have to say, I didn't have that guidance and I didn't actively seek out that guidance either. Checking in with my counselor, checking in with teachers and professors. I just, was doing the work in the first half of the semester. And then I thought, well, I'm doing really well. I don't think I need to go to these classes anymore. So, going out with friends and hanging out, bowling and things that of that nature. And then, of course, showing up for finals and then realizing that, I think I had to turn in some assignments as well. And um, I didn't know until afterwards that there is a window where you can withdraw from your classes. Um, had I known that, I probably would have done it. And so I essentially failed those classes and the university just dropped me.
Wow.
And that to me was a shock because I didn't know that they can do that.
Well, that's interesting. I think that's a really telling story, I think, for a lot of young professionals that are kind of, figuring it all out, putting it all together, because there is it's so funny. This topic is, when is the right time to pursue additional education? How do we weigh the pros and cons of that? The assumption is that when you're in this education, you were like all in, like there's, and I think a lot of, especially for master's degrees, PhDs, that sort of thing, like most people are all in. It's not like, we're going to get our MBA to go back to, go to the bar or whatever. But I think for a lot of times in undergraduate, it's almost like this education's your social outlet to explore yourself and learn who you are and what you want to be professionally, or where you want to be just as a person, as a grown-up, because you've maybe been sheltered in, your childhood growing up. Perhaps, I don't know, not to say that's the case with you, but I think that's for a lot of students what's going on with them.
Well, it is. And, there is this freedom where you're essentially on your own, when you're in grammar school and high school, there's a lot of follow up, from the teachers, from, guidance counselors, and it's more structured versus where in a university you have this sudden freedom where yes, you have to select, certain courses, but you can kind of select what day, what time to take them. And there really isn't anyone there to push you to say, okay, you have to go and take these classes. One of the things that I also realized is that I received this financial aid, so it didn't cost me as much until afterwards when I realized that having been dropped from that university also meant that it caused receiving the consequence was receiving less financial aid for that same reason that, they're not going to give you aid for having a C or a D. That's not going to happen. But it did take a while for me to just kind of find that path. And what I would say, really depends on just several factors, and each situation is unique. Um, if there is something, that you're interested in healthcare, you don't know exactly what field or what area, I would definitely recommend just to go into something that's, not, I don't want to say simple, but, going into, um, like medical assisting, kind of get a feel of that area, similar to like what I did. Is that something that I enjoy doing? Did I like working in a hospital setting or in a, medical setting? I did. Um, the so one of the problems was that I was not able to, I was accepted into that university to go into nursing. However, they didn't accept all of the credits because the associate degree where I received, it didn't accept all the credits. So I was essentially starting over, and I thought, well, that means I have to take out more loans, and that's just not. I'm like, I can't do that. Not at this, based on how much I was making. Um, so I just decided to continue going to that private university and take out a few more loans, go out um, one more year and receive the bachelor. So
That's that. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's interesting. So what I'd be curious to know is how did you, yeah, that's interesting. How did you, so it sounds like financial was a really big determiner for not pursuing that additional healthcare or that nursing degree. I think it probably was, it seems like it was a smart move. It seems like you got your bachelor's degree, were able to go out, get professional experience within the healthcare industry, and then were able to determine like, yes, I want to pursue this further, or no, I don't.
yeah, yeah.
And I think
And
that's
that
a, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I think that, really helped. And, for anyone out there, if you want to go into finance, just try to get like a 2-year, degree and try to get those, connections. If it's an internship or even with, any nonprofit or any area, volunteering, that always helps. And, you kind of have that familiarity, that experience as to, is this something that I see myself in or that I see doing? But when I decided to go back to school to obtain my master's, that was like a 20-year gap from when I received my bachelor's.
And so let's talk about that. How did you determine that was the right time to go get your master's, and why? And like, why did you get your MBA? What made you want to pursue that? What did it help you accomplish?
So what actually helped to accomplish was, again, having a better understanding and idea of the nonprofit world, and the different fundraising vehicles, the techniques, as well as um, different um, how to segment donors, grant writing. It's just, the world of nonprofit, it has so many areas. And to me, I thought this is a good time for me to go. What really motivated me was, one, that I had the time, um, and I knew that between home and work, I was able to balance it. Now, when I went to North Park, um, go, go Vikings, giving them a shout out. Um, it was a course. I just took one course per quarter. I was not in a hurry to complete the master's, especially not at my age. But more importantly, I just wanted to take, to have that work life home balance, um, and really not overwhelm myself, and just take this experience. And, if I'm going to take a class, I want to, be able to focus and dedicate that time. Another factor was, that the university offered scholarships. They offered a discount if you were part of an organization. So I enrolled in AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And so the university offered like a 40% discount or scholarship off of, the tuition for each class. And then I realized that, Rotary also offered tuition reimbursement. So it was a 90% reimbursement. So normally a course that would cost like $2,000, I ended up paying like 150. And I thought, there's no way, like, how can I pass this up? I think at the end they were like gonna owe me.
I love that. I think that's a very smart way of going about that. I think that makes a ton of sense. I'm really glad that you shared that. And one, I would imagine your experience with grant writing helped you with getting scholarships and that sort of thing, because I would imagine they're similar kind of processes. Yes.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. You just have to look at the criteria. I did actually apply towards the end of my studies. I was, laid off in August 2020. And so that was something that was unexpected. But again, Rotary was no exception to many organizations and employers that were affected due to the pandemic. And so I did come to that difficult decision as to, should I continue? Should I wait? There was just so many unknown factors. In 2020, I don't think there was a lot of information still about like, the virus and the pandemic and, what was going to be the outcome. But given that I had like 5 to 6 classes left, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go like move forward and take the last courses, and I'm going to start looking for opportunities for scholarships. So one of them I did apply through Delta Mu Delta, and I just looked at the deadline, the criteria, and just started working on that. So that definitely was a tremendous help, like that grant writing course.
That's awesome. And I love that. I love the resourcefulness and within all that, because I mean, that makes a ton of sense. And you were able to get your organization to pay for a part of it, that being Rotary. And obviously, things changed, the pandemic, a lot of people were affected by that, but then you were able to pivot and be even more resourceful by reaching out to Delta Mu Delta. I think that's fantastic. So I love hearing those types of stories and those types of scenarios and situations. I don't know, one thing I hear from a lot of professionals is when they go get their MBA or they go get their master's or additional education, they don't tell their company, they pay for it out of pocket. And then they just assume like, okay, I got my MBA, and they're like, ta-da, I'm here, I've arrived, I got my MBA, like, promotion please. And the company is like, we had no idea you were studying to get your MBA. Like, we had no idea what you were doing. We don't, like, the reason it's so often, I unfortunately see a lot of professionals where they will go pursue additional education without talking to their employer, without actually really communicating what their goals are from getting education. So I'll see oftentimes someone gets an MBA and they didn't tell their boss, and then they finally, in a spur of frustration, go to their boss and say, I can't believe I haven't been promoted yet. This company doesn't appreciate who I am. I got an MBA and I've done this and I've done that. And I would love to, I wanted to lead a team and I never ended up getting into that. And the boss was like, you wanted to lead a team? Like, you didn't need to get your MBA for that. Like, we could have promoted you to this management role, but you never talked to me about this. You never told me that. Like, I assumed you like being an individual contributor. And like, those sorts of things could have been talked about and potentially saved like tens of thousands of dollars from getting an MBA because they didn't talk to anybody. So it's so vital, I think, that you talk to your employer. And so that's one of the things that I really loved about your story.
Oh, definitely.
You found opportunities to get reimbursed from your employer. So yeah, I think a lot of companies will actually pay for you to get your MBA. So I think that's awesome that you did that.
Oh, sure. And, it's not to say that, that I just signed up and, suddenly, went to, people in talent and said, okay, here's, my classes, reimburse me. There was a process. And so part of that process was to create a professional development plan, review it with your, superior, your manager or supervisor, and have that approved. So, which also helped because, you know, the employer also wants to know, I mean, if they're going to be reimbursing, they want to know, what are your plans? What are your goals? What's the reason that you want to take this course? And how is it going to help them also?
I love that. I think that so could you tell me more about that professional development plan? Because I think this is probably something that, although Rotary made you do this, probably everybody who's contemplating pursuing additional education should probably create a professional development plan of like what they want this education to help them achieve. Because I think we become infatuated with this idea of becoming a PhD or a master's or an MBA or whatever. And we don't actually think, what are the outcomes we want from this? And does this education, are they mutually, like, do I have to have this education to get me there or not? I don't
True.
know.
Yeah, no, I think independently, it is important to have a professional development plan, and whether it's, 3 to 5 years, similar to how companies have a strategic plan, like you should just have that for yourself. Like, where do you see yourself? What do you want to do? And what do you need to get there? And if part of that plan is to, go back to school or take some courses, sometimes you just need a certificate. You don't need the whole degree, and that's sufficient. Or, as you mentioned, just simply talk to your supervisor and let them know, like, I would like to lead a team, and what does it take for me to do that? What's the criteria? Sometimes it's, develop your leadership skills. Well, you don't need to go get your MBA for that. Sometimes just taking a course or even joining like Toastmasters if you need to improve your speaking.
I love that. I love the alternatives. I love the new, other ways of thinking about it, because I think that's so critical. I'd love to ask the audience a question real quick. What is your professional development plan? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that. I'd love to learn like, what is your plan for where you'd like to go and where you'd like to be? I think I'd be fascinated. But yeah, so Mireya, you shared about getting your MBA. Now that you got your MBA, how has that helped you in your career path?
It's definitely, well, one, it's kept me in the know. So I will say, when I first attended my in-person class, because I'm old school, and so I showed up with a notebook and a pencil, thinking like, is this still used? Because, I graduated with a bachelor's last century. In the late 1900s, I guess, is what they're saying now. Um, and so I had to learn, what Canva is and how to create an account and things like that. And so it really helped me, just, overall, like professionally. Um, and it's also really reshaped my way of thinking. A lot of these questions, where I'm, now a board member for a local YMCA, um, ways that they're trying to reach target audiences, sustain members, um, increase donors. There's a lot of things that, I'm now thinking of how is this going to benefit, and it's really helped, in that sense, as well as with interview questions, questions for donors. A lot of the times, people who work in soliciting gifts, major gift officers, they don't really have those tools or the capacity, the knowledge, like how, how do you go to school and ask for a solicitation of, 6 figures? So, that really, I found that it really helped, just again, having that conversation, with donors, learning their stories of why they're giving, how, what's the most meaningful gift that you made and why, what was so special about that. So that's something that you don't always get into. You have that opportunity in the real world, but for this specific program at North Park, working in the nonprofit area, that was something that I found really helpful.
How do you do a cost benefit analysis for the value of getting an additional certification or credential or an MBA? Like, how do you, because I mean, there's so many different credentials, there's so many different certifications, there's so many different MBA programs. Some can be, $100,000 a semester. Some can be, $2,000 a semester. I mean, how do you determine which one is going to give you the ROI that you're seeking? And yeah, like, is there a mathematical formula we can use to think about that?
Um, so for me, when I was, looking back, cost was, definitely a factor, but it was also, um, what did the university or the college offer? How were these classes formatted? Did they have that flexibility? Did they all have to be in person, or were, they available in online? So how long, did these courses take? That was one of the things that I found in retrospect, that, these semesters that are like 16 weeks long or even 12 weeks long, that was just like too much for me. So going to these private colleges where North Park has quads. So it's like two classes in a semester. So each class is like 7 weeks long. And it's very intense. So part of that reason, it's just like it helps you to be even more focused. Like you don't have time to kind of lolly around. But again, I'm in a different mindset too. So I would say it just really depends on, on the cost, on what they're offering. And, talking to your employer, is this something that you're able to cover? Even if you're working in, in a accounts payable, but you want to go into media and communications, are they able to cover that?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I know one of the guest speakers we've had on in the past on this topic was a contributor for US News on this topic, and her rule of thumb was take the annual, essentially, her rule of thumb was, can you pay back this education in 5 years? And that's just essentially how she looked at it. Was she said, take your annual salary of what it's going to be after you graduate. That should equal the annual cost of this education. And then if you save 20% of that and contribute that towards paying back off those loans, you'll be paid off in 5 years. If the cost of the education is more than that, not worth it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
And I thought that was a really fascinating thing, because I have seen some pretty high priced master's and MBA programs, which, sure, the universities sound prestigious and the programs sound great and all, but like, if you're not earning enough to essentially make that pay offable in 5 years, I mean, it's probably not going to net you the ROI that you're seeking. So
Certainly.
yeah, Mireya, I love to ask you just a couple final questions. Are there any final tips or advice or suggestions you have for any professionals that are still on the fence or about getting this idea? I feel like we've covered some really cool points about the professional development plan and how to I guess maybe, are there any final tips you have for any professionals pursuing additional education? One, and two, how do you audit your professional development plan? How do you update it so then it is the most relevant? Because life changes, things happen. How do you go about updating it and creating a roadmap for what new education or certifications you might need to get you to where you want to go in the future, or just a roadmap in general for where you'd like to be in the future?
So I would say, just not be in a rush. Again, there's this mindset that, right after high school, you're supposed to go to college and attend college in 4 years and complete your studies. And the reality is that that's not the case. A lot of students nowadays, sometimes it takes them 5, 6 years, and that's perfectly fine. You need to take time off to really think about, what you want to pursue, then it's better to do that. Take off a semester and, focus, think if, that's something that you want to do. Again, for me, it took time to really figure out what it was that I wanted to do. Um, and I would say, if you do have that time, you have that support from your employer, from family, if you have the financial means. And even if you don't, look at options, tuition reimbursement, just, any discounts, scholarships, things of that nature. Um, think about how is that degree or that certificate going to help you, and what are the next steps after that. So I know for me, I, completed in-house programs that the organization that Rotary provided. And afterwards, I was kind of done with that. And I thought, I still want to continue to learn and just receive those certificates. And I thought, okay, well, what's next? And that's where I, completed my master's. So I think right now I'm probably going to take a break and kind of see, now that I completed that goal, see what's next. So that's just my way of thinking that, you basically never stop learning. And so there's always opportunity for you just to continue to learn.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, Mireya, this has been great. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody in our audience, thank you all for being here. Last question. How can our audience learn more about you? Are you okay with them connecting with you on LinkedIn?
Oh, absolutely. They can connect with me at LinkedIn, or also connect with me through my email at Turmolin Watkins and Brands, which is Dominguez at twbfundraising.com.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, Mireya, thanks for being here. Everybody in our audience, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. See everybody.